Welcome back, everybody. Hope you've enjoyed the show up to this point. I'm really into our next interview with Jordan Morgan, who, if you remember, Jordan had a terrific prep career at U of D Jesuit before going on to play for John Beeline at the University of Michigan. Had NBA dreams, went undrafted, but still has carved out a solid career as a pro basketball player in Europe and beyond. Sportscaster.com's Gavin Velicevic from De La Salle High School caught up with Jordan about what it means to play professionally and his thoughts on the NBA potentially expanding into Europe in the future.
I'm really excited to introduce someone who's taken his game around the world in Slovenia, Italy, Turkey, France, and is currently balling out in South Korea with the Swan KT Sonic Boom. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Let's go back to kind of the beginning. Your college ball at U of M had a great run there, the 2013 March Madness runner-up and 2013 all-defensive team. After college, you built an amazing college career, international career, I should say. What was it like kind of adjusting into your first professional or international team overseas?
Man, it's a huge adjustment, I will say. And anybody that's done it will say the same thing. My first season I went to Italy. I was a little bit fortunate in that respect. I was in Rome, so I was in a nice place to live and everything. It's not always that nice, trust me. You can be in smaller cities and things like that, or harder places to live. But all that being said, the adjustment is big because you leave your family, everything. Even now, I'm in South Korea and I got a 7-month-old at home and my wife is at home. So it's always tough sometimes you have to sacrifice something that most people don't realize. And the season is long, and it's just a different culture and a different mentality from the club. And I mean, there's so many things we could talk. We could talk for probably a whole show about it, but it's definitely a big adjustment.
You've talked about the mental adjustment and kind of the distance between home. I took a rough estimate earlier. It's about 6,500 miles away from Michigan. Like, how do you stay motivated and focused that whole time when you're thousands of miles away?
I'm gonna be honest. I mean, it's not for everybody. I've seen a lot of players that are very good players and don't necessarily have the desire or the mental fortitude to stick it out. I think my first few years, you have to kind of like grow as a person, like a lot, and you spend a lot of time alone. I'm in Korea. I'm in a 13-hour time difference, so most of my day I spend just in my own time. I talk to my wife and my son, like my family, in the mornings or before I go to bed. So it's a big adjustment in that sense. You spend a lot of time by yourself and you got to be comfortable with that. Now, not a lot of people these days are comfortable, sitting by themselves. And it took me a few years to really kind of get the swing of things, but you really, really got to love it, I would say, to make it this long. I've been doing it 11 years. And I would say I love basketball now even more than I did probably when I started because that's the only way you can survive in this for that long. You got to really, really love it.
Yeah, I mean, you've obviously played all over the world, US, Europe, Asia. What's the biggest difference between like Europe and Asian basketball?
So Europe is super competitive. I mean, so most people are familiar. Well, I don't know. I don't know how many people are familiar with the relegation system, but in Europe, if you have a bad season, you get kicked out of the league, right? So imagine you finish last in the Big Ten or the bottom two in the Big Ten in Michigan basketball, and the next season you're not in the Big Ten. You're in, no offense to anybody, but you're in the MAC, right? MAC is a great conference, but it's not the Big Ten. So that's what it's like in Europe. So it's super, super competitive and every game means something. I mean, you lose a game and it's like stress. Everybody's like you're walking around on eggshells. You can't smile. You can't laugh. It's this different mentality. The basketball is very tactical. It's like some of the best basketball minds in the world, and you wonder why some of the best players in the NBA are international now because they learn how to play the game in a way that they can just read the whole floor. And you got to be able to do that in Europe. Asia is a little bit different. When I come here, one of the reasons that the team I'm with brought me here was because of my experience in Europe and being able to help players understand the game a little bit more. I'm almost kind of like coaching a little bit sometimes of how to guard things or plays and things like that. And I would say in general in Asia, basketball is a little bit more about entertainment. I don't know that they have the same relegation system, and it's more just like for entertainment value. In Asia, you have less foreign players, so I'm one of two Americans on my team. Versus Europe, you might have five or six or seven, sometimes eight, right? So you're kind of expected to put up numbers and it's more like an entertainment kind of thing here.
Americans follow college basketball, NBA basketball. Many don't really realize that basketball has kind of been the second most popular team sport in Europe. Announced earlier that the NBA had a partnership with FIBA and is exploring maybe a new basketball league in Europe, aiming to expand their presence and fan base, kind of like what we saw with the NFL or the MLB through international games. What do you think on it? You think that's possible, maybe?
I mean, I think the NBA's got enough power to do it for sure. I would say most people don't realize how controversial this topic is. People hear NBA going to Europe and they think it's simple or that all Europeans are excited for it. And I would tell you that that's not the case. Many Europeans despise the NBA and the style of play. And another thing people don't realize is that there has been a feud in Europe for the last decade between FIBA, which is the international body of basketball, and EuroLeague, which is the best basketball league outside the NBA, and it's the top teams in Europe. So FIBA runs every international league around the world, so that's the Asian League, East Asian Super League, West Asian Super League, Basketball Africa League, the South American League, whatever. They run all of them. But in Europe, they don't dominate. EuroLeague dominates. And so there's been a feud between them for like I said, the last decade between EuroLeague and the FIBA leagues in Europe. That's Basketball Champions League, that's the FIBA Cup, and that's national teams, right? So like Serbia and France, right? So they've been like scheduling things on the same days. And so when the NBA says they're going to go to Europe, they're still in the middle of this feud. So how's that going to work? Are they going to partner with EuroLeague? Are they going to partner with FIBA? It's a very touchy situation. So there's a lot to be worked out. But I think what's interesting about the NBA saying they're going to go to Europe is now all of a sudden both sides kind of are trying to be the first in line, the first at the table. And so, there's this balance of like wanting the stable revenues that the NBA brings, but also wanting to maintain the authenticity of the European basketball product.
So let's say hypothetically NBA does get to Europe. How do you think that affects the NBA at home?
I think you get a few things. Number one, you'll get a more integrated pipeline. There's already been some like developments, right? And just international players coming to the NBA. And you see more and more every year. But I think that's going to become even more of an integrated process. So you'll have development in the G League, you'll have development overseas, but they'll have more control over that. Number one. Number two, something that I think that NBA should have been doing for a while now, which is showing more European games. There's no reason that NBA TV shouldn't be showing some of the top European games as it is. And I think this gives them opportunity to expand their portfolio as far as their product goes, to show more games that are, I'm gonna be honest, really intense, and they're great to watch. I watch EuroLeague basketball probably more than I watch NBA basketball. It's super competitive, super tactical. And I think a lot of NBA fans will probably appreciate seeing players that they knew from past NBA and college playing overseas, for Fenerbahce or Barcelona, right? I would think they would enjoy that too.
You've had a unique experience, obviously, coming over internationally, and a part of that also includes your foundation that you established, the Jordan Morgan Foundation. Tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about that and how you've managed being an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and an athlete all at the same time.
Yeah, I would say it's hard, to be honest. First and foremost, the Jordan Morgan Foundation is an expression of like my desire to give back. I've always done community service, something that my parents instilled in me from a young age. And I stuck with that through college. And so when I graduated and I became a professional, I wanted a vehicle to be able, all the philanthropy that I do, all the volunteering, everything to be able to go through that. And so now the Jordan Morgan Foundation is something that we use to support causes around Detroit aimed at providing opportunities and access to STEM programs. So I'm a big believer in STEM. I'm an engineering graduate, obviously. So for those that don't know, STEM or STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, right? My belief and our belief at the Jordan Morgan Foundation is that STEM education, STEAM education has the potential to reshape underserved communities because it improves education, it improves performance in school, it improves access to better jobs, and overall it will improve communities. And so that's why we choose to support STEAM. Obviously, it has an important place in our lives, but we also believe that it has a power to fundamentally shape communities.
Awesome. Well, Jordan, thanks again for your time today. We appreciate all your information and insight, especially on any international expansion. Anything that you'd give a final advice to athletes that are trying to maybe take the same route as you or look at a different way of coming up into the professional or international realm?
Yeah, I would say I never imagined that I'd have this career. My dream was always to play college basketball. And so I think now, especially with access to social media and things, like it's great to dream, but you can never get to those places, to college or the NBA or a professional in general without like focusing intently on where you're at now. So if you're in middle school, if you're in high school, be the best player you can be right now. How can I get better for my next season, right? Taking it one step at a time. And I think just enjoying that because, life changes, man. Like I look back, high school for me was almost 20 years ago. It's just crazy. I enjoy being a kid. And then everything else will kind of take care of itself. But you really got to be focused on like every single day, trying to be the best where you are.
Awesome. Thanks, Jordan, again.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time. Once again, people, Jordan Morgan here with us on Sportscaster's Open Mic.
Good stuff. Good advice from Jordan Morgan. I mean, really good. And that is our show for this week. I want to thank all of our guests for being on. Jordan Morgan, again, doing his thing, playing abroad, professional basketball. Obviously can take on a variety of paths, and he is doing it his way. We also want to thank Gavin Velicevic for the great interview that he did with Jordan. I want to thank Tim McCormick, who spent his last 30 years covering basketball, obviously a great basketball player in his own right, and to Giovanni Macheri for sharing that interview. We want to thank TNT sideline reporter Lauren Jabara. Again, Lauren grew up in Waterford, graduated from Michigan, and now one of the top young reporters covering the NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, and everything else for TNT. And Lyric Sloan, again, a rising star in this industry, I think, currently at Michigan State University. So a good interview that we were all able to hear between Lyric and Lauren. And also to Amari Sankofa, one of the good young scribes covering the Detroit Pistons for the Free Press. His interview with Aiden Novak from Lake Orion High School, really good stuff. Looking forward to catching up with Amari a little bit later this week. As I mentioned, the Pistons still alive in the postseason, trailing the best-of-7 series, 3-2. Game 6 will be tomorrow night in downtown Detroit at 7:30. And for those of you that may be coming down to the game, maybe I'll run into you in person. But for those of you tuning in, hope you enjoy it. And hopefully we can stretch this season out just a little bit longer. But we appreciate you tuning in to our show. Until next time, I'm Johnny Kane for Sportscasters Open Mic, and we want to thank you for listening.